"Can I pay tomorrow?" begs a homeless girl, asking for milk from a millionaire. He pays and follows her. What he sees next leaves him pale and speechless. Before we begin, I'm curious. What time is it where you are? Day or night, I'm grateful you're here. Please like this video and follow our channel so you don't miss our future uploads. The fluorescent lights of Wilson's Corner Market buzzed overhead as Thomas Reynolds checked his watch. 8:47 p.m. The young tech mogul had stopped on impulse, craving something sweet after another 14-hour workday. At 30, Thomas had everything money could buy: a penthouse overlooking Central Park, a fleet of luxury cars, and a company valued at billions. Everything except someone to share it with. "Excuse me, sir?" The small voice came from somewhere near his elbow. Thomas looked down to see a girl no older than 7. Her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her blue coat was clean, but worn thin at the elbows. Something in her earnest blue eyes stopped him from walking away. "Could I please have this milk? I can pay you tomorrow, I promise." She clutched a half-gallon carton with both hands, her knuckles white with determination. Thomas felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. "Where are your parents?" "My mum's sick." The girl shifted uncomfortably, but maintained eye contact. "I'm Emily Wilson." "I'm Thomas." He knelt to her level, surprised by his own action. "Why do you need milk so badly, Emily?" "For my brother. He's 4, and he gets scared at night without milk." She spoke with the gravity of someone much older. "I'll bring the money tomorrow. I'm not a beggar." The pride in her voice, that unexpected dignity, moved him. Thomas reached for his wallet. "Let me get that for you, Emily." "No need to pay me back." "Are you sure?" Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "My mom says we don't take handouts." "It's not a handout. It's just milk." Thomas paid the cashier, who'd been watching their exchange with thinly veiled impatience. Emily accepted the bag with a solemn nod. "Thank you, sir." "Do you need a ride home?" "It's getting dark." "No, thank you. I'm not allowed to go with strangers." She backed toward the door. "Even nice ones." Thomas watched her leave, clutching the milk carton against her chest. Something about her troubled him. Her adult-like responsibility, those familiar blue eyes. Before he could second-guess himself, he followed her at a distance, telling himself he just wanted to ensure she got home safely. Emily moved with purpose through streets that grew progressively shabbier. Thomas kept his distance, his Italian leather shoes incongruous against the cracked sidewalks. After 15 minutes, she turned into an abandoned apartment building with boarded windows and graffiti-covered walls. Thomas hesitated. What was he doing? Following a child? He should call social services. But something, intuition or curiosity, pushed him forward. He found a broken window at ground level and peered inside. What he saw drained the blood from his face. The condemned building's interior was illuminated by a single battery-powered lamp. In its dim glow, Thomas watched Emily carefully pour milk into a chipped Batman cup. A small boy with tousled brown hair sat cross-legged on a nest of blankets arranged on the floor. "Here you go, Matty," Emily said, her voice suddenly gentle. "Drink it slow so it lasts longer." "Is Mommy coming home today?" The boy's voice was hopeful. Emily's shoulders tensed as she arranged a threadbare blanket around her brother. "Not today, buddy. She's still getting better at the hospital." "Indeed, but it's been forever," Matty protested, milk forming a white moustache above his lip. "I know." Emily sighed with the weariness of someone 4 times her age. "But Dr. Carter says her lungs need more time." Thomas pressed closer to the window, heart hammering against his ribs. Children, alone in an abandoned building while their mother was hospitalized. He pulled out his phone, then hesitated. What would happen to them in the system? Separated, shuffled between foster homes? "Did you eat today?" Matty asked his sister, offering her the cup. Emily shook her head. "I'm not hungry." The lie was betrayed by the audible growl of her stomach. "You can have some of mine," Matty insisted. "No, buddy, you need to grow big and strong." Emily ruffled his hair. "Mrs. Grayson from the second floor gave me an apple yesterday. I already ate it." Thomas watched, transfixed, as Emily tucked her brother in, singing a lullaby in a sweet, clear voice that seemed to transform the squalid room. Once Matty was asleep, she pulled out a dog-eared composition book and began writing by lamplight. "Day 83, she whispered as she wrote. "Mom's still at Central Hospital. Doctor. Carter says her pneumonia is better, but she's still weak." Emily's pencil paused. "Matty asked about Dad again. I told him Dad's working far away. It's better than saying he left and never came back." Thomas backed away from the window, mind racing. Central Hospital was only 10 blocks from his office. The children's mother had been hospitalized for nearly 3 months. Who was looking after them? How were they surviving? He couldn't call authorities, not yet, not until he knew more. These children were managing to stay together, and Emily was clearly doing everything possible to care for her brother. Thomas hurried back to his Bentley, already forming a plan. He would visit Central Hospital tomorrow, find out about their mother's condition. Maybe there was a way to help without tearing their family apart. As he drove home to his empty penthouse, Thomas couldn't shake the image of Emily's determined face. For the first time in years, the crushing loneliness of his success felt unbearable. These children had nothing but each other, yet somehow seemed richer than he had ever been. He made a decision. He would return tomorrow night, bringing food and supplies. It wasn't a solution, but it was a start. What Thomas couldn't possibly know was how this chance encounter would unravel everything he thought he knew about his past and change his future forever. Morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Thomas's penthouse as he paced, phone pressed to his ear. "I need information on a patient," he told his assistant. "Sarah Wilson, admitted to Central Hospital approximately 3 months ago. Pneumonia, possibly with complications." "Sir, that's not exactly legal." "I'm not asking you to hack the Pentagon, Diane. Just find what you can. Her children are alone and I need to help." Thomas ended the call and stared at the Manhattan skyline. He hadn't slept, his mind replaying Emily's face, her familiar blue eyes, the way she protected her brother. There was something about her that nagged at his memory, something he couldn't place. His phone buzzed an hour later. "Sarah Wilson, 28, single mother of 2, Diane reported. "Admitted 94 days ago with severe pneumonia that developed into sepsis. Her condition is stable but critical. Insurance coverage expired 6 weeks ago. Hospitals keeping her on charitable care, but they're pressing for transfer to a state facility." "Who's listed as next of kin?" "There's no one, sir. Just her children, Emily 7 and Matthew 4. Social services has been notified, but the children haven't been located. According to notes, they're supposedly staying with a neighbor." Thomas thanked her and hung up, a cold weight settling in his stomach. The children had evaded authorities, choosing to live in an abandoned building rather than be separated. He instructed his driver to take him to Central Hospital, then stopped at a grocery store, filling a cart with nutritious, easy-to-eat foods. He left the bags near the building where Emily and Matty were staying, hidden enough to avoid attracting attention, but where Emily would find them. At the hospital, Thomas used his considerable influence to gain access to Sarah Wilson's medical information. As he flipped through her chart, a nurse approached. "Are you family?" she asked suspiciously. "An old friend," Thomas replied. "How is she doing, really?" The nurse's expression softened. "She's a fighter. Severe pneumonia led to sepsis, then acute respiratory distress syndrome. She's stable now, but recovery will be long. She's always asking about her children, worried sick about them. Can I see her?" Room 418. Don't stay long, she tires easily. Thomas's heart pounded as he approached room 418. Through the small window in the door, he could see a woman lying still, oxygen tubes in her nose, an IV in her arm. Her blonde hair was spread across the pillow, her once vibrant face now pale and thin. He froze, hand on the doorknob. It couldn't be. The woman in the hospital bed was Sarah. His Sarah. The girl he'd loved with his whole heart 10 years ago, before ambition and family expectations tore them apart. The girl whose rejection of his proposal had sent him spiraling into work-obsessed isolation. The girl whose blue eyes he'd recognized in her daughter's face. Thomas stumbled back from the door, memories flooding back with brutal clarity. Sarah laughing as they ran through summer rain. Sarah arguing passionately about literature in their college classes. Sarah crying as she returned his ring, telling him she couldn't be part of his world. "Sir, are you all right?" A nurse steadied him. I need a moment," he managed. Sarah Wilson, not her married name but her maiden name, which meant... Thomas pressed his hand against the wall for support as realization crashed over him. Emily was 7. He and Sarah had parted ways 8 years ago. The timeline fit perfectly. Could Emily be his daughter? Thomas sat in his car outside the hospital, hands gripping the steering wheel as memories overwhelmed him. 10 years earlier, he'd been a different person. A scholarship student at Columbia with big dreams but limited means. Falling hopelessly in love with Sarah Wilson, a brilliant literature major with summer sky eyes. "You're going to change the world someday," she'd told him, belief shining in her expression. "Just don't forget me when you do." Their love had been the all-consuming kind that comes once in a lifetime. Late-night conversations about books and dreams, picnics in Central Park, dancing in his tiny apartment to music only they could hear. Then came the investment opportunity that would launch his career, and the ultimatum from his mentor. Focus entirely on the business or lose his shot. Thomas had been certain Sarah would understand, would wait while he built their future. "I'm not asking you to choose," Sarah had said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm telling you there's room for both in your life, but you can't see that anymore." He'd offered her a ring, a promise. She'd handed it back. "I won't be the afterthought in your life, Thomas. I deserve more. You deserve more." He'd let pride keep him from going after her, convincing himself she'd come back when he proved himself successful. But success came at a consuming pace, and by the time he surfaced, a year had passed. His calls went unanswered. Sarah had vanished from their shared circles. Thomas had built his empire, dated socialites and models, but never again experienced the soul-deep connection he'd shared with Sarah. He'd convinced himself it was the rose-colored memory of first love, nothing more. Now, sitting outside Central Hospital, that self-deception crumbled. If Emily was 7, she would have been conceived shortly after their breakup. Had Sarah already known she was pregnant when she walked away? Had she tried to tell him? Thomas thought of Emily's fierce independence, her protective nature, her quick intelligence, reflections of himself he hadn't recognized, and her eyes, Sarah's eyes, but with his intensity. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts until he found one he hadn't used in years. "Professor Jenkins, it's Thomas Reynolds." "Yes, it's been a long time. I'm calling about Sarah Wilson. Did you know she had a child after we broke up?" The lengthy silence on the other end was answer enough. "She made us promise not to tell you," the old professor finally said. "She said you'd made your choice, and she wasn't going to derail your future with a responsibility you weren't ready for. So Emily is... I don't know any Emily. Sarah had a daughter she named Charlotte. Beautiful child. I attended the christening." Thomas frowned. "Charlotte, are you sure? Positive?" Sarah was very clear about wanting a family name, after her grandmother Charlotte. Thomas thanked him and hung up, confusion clouding his certainty. Charlotte, not Emily. Had Sarah changed her daughter's name? Or was Emily not his child after all? He needed answers, but first he needed to ensure the children were safe. If Sarah, his Sarah, was fighting for her life, he would make sure her children wanted for nothing, regardless of who their father might be. As daylight faded, Thomas returned to the abandoned building with more supplies: blankets, a battery-powered heater, children's books, and a prepaid phone. This time he included a note. "I want to help. Call me." The man who bought the milk. From the shadows, he watched Emily discover his offerings, her small face registering shock, suspicion, then cautious gratitude. She tucked the phone into her pocket without calling, but carried everything else inside to her brother. Thomas returned to his car, questions swirling. One thing was certain: tomorrow, he would face Sarah for the first time in 8 years, and nothing would ever be the same again. For 3 days, Thomas established a routine. Mornings were for work, compressed into frantic hours of meetings and decisions. Afternoons found him researching Sarah's condition, consulting specialists, arranging for anonymous payments toward her hospital bills. Evenings were spent watching over Emily and Matty from a distance, leaving supplies where Emily would find them. The prepaid phone remained silent. On the 4th day, Thomas received a text message from an unknown number. "Why are you helping us?" His heart raced as he typed, "Because everyone needs help sometimes." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Are you going to call social services?" "No," Thomas replied immediately. "I just want to make sure you're safe while your mum gets better." A long pause followed. "She's been sick for a long time." "I know, I visited the hospital." The response came quickly. "You know my mum?" Thomas stared at the screen, unsure how to answer. "I knew her a long time ago," he finally wrote. "We were friends in college." She never mentions college friends. Thomas could almost see Emily's suspicious frown. People lose touch. Life gets complicated. "Are you going to visit her again?" "Yes. Is there anything you want me to tell her?" "Tell her Matty learned to tie his shoes, and that we're okay. Don't tell her where we're staying. I promise." The conversation ended there, but Thomas felt something shift. A tentative bridge had formed. That evening he parked near the abandoned building and waited. After 20 minutes, the small figure of Emily emerged, approaching his car with cautious determination. She stopped several feet away. "Are you really my mom's friend?" Thomas nodded, staying in the car to appear less threatening. "What's her favorite book?" The question caught him off guard, then made him smile. Of course Emily would test him. "Jane Eyre," he answered. She loves the quote about being a free human being with an independent will. Something in Emily's expression relaxed marginally. "Why are you helping us?" "Because your mother would do the same for anyone who needed it. We don't need charity." Emily's chin lifted in a gesture so familiar it made his chest ache. "It's not charity when it's family," Thomas said carefully. "Even old family friends." Emily studied him with unnerving intensity. "You're the man from the store, Thomas." "Yes." "You're rich." He blinked at her directness. "I have more than I need." "Mom says rich people forget what matters." The statement hit with unexpected force. "Your mom is a wise woman." Emily nodded solemnly. "She is. That's why we have to take care of things while she's sick." "You've been very brave," Thomas said gently, "but you don't have to do it alone anymore. We can't go to foster care. They'll separate us. Matty has nightmares." "I won't let that happen," Thomas promised, the vehemence in his voice surprising them both. Emily took a step closer. "Why do you care so much?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications Thomas wasn't ready to address. "Because everyone deserves someone who cares," he said finally. Emily seemed to accept this. "You can come see Matty if you want. He doesn't talk to many people." The invitation felt monumental. Thomas followed Emily into the building, ducking through a broken doorway into the space they'd made their temporary home. Despite the circumstances, the children had created a semblance of order. Homework papers were stacked neatly. A makeshift clothesline held freshly washed garments. Mattie looked up from a tattered picture book, eyes widening at the sight of a stranger. "This is Thomas," Emily explained. "He's Mum's friend. He brought us the blankets." "Hello, Mattie," Thomas said, kneeling to the boy's level. Mattie regarded him solemnly before asking, "Do you know when Mum is coming home?" The question broke something open in Thomas's heart. "Not exactly, but I'm going to help make it as soon as possible." As he spoke with the children, learning about their daily struggles and small triumphs, Thomas made a silent vow. Whatever the truth about Emily's parentage, these children would never spend another night in an abandoned building. Tomorrow he would face Sarah and their past, once and for all. The antiseptic smell of Central Hospital surrounded Thomas as he stood outside room 418, a bouquet of daisies, Sarah's favourites, clutched in his hand. After 3 false starts, he finally knocked softly and entered. Sarah was sitting up, gazing out the window. She turned as the door opened, the polite smile of someone expecting another doctor freezing on her face. "Thomas?" Her voice was barely a whisper. He hadn't prepared for this moment, the shock of seeing her again, beautiful despite the illness that had ravaged her body. Her blonde hair was shorter now, her face thinner, but her eyes, those extraordinary blue eyes he'd seen mirrored in Emily's face, were unchanged. "Hello, Sarah." He stepped forward, suddenly conscious of his expensive suit, the gulf of years between them. "What are you? How did you—" She struggled to form a coherent question. "I saw your name on the patient registry." The lie came easily. He wasn't ready to reveal his encounter with Emily. "I was here for a charity board meeting." Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly. She'd always been able to sense his half-truths. 8 years without a word, and you just happened to notice my name?" Thomas placed the daisies on her bedside table. "I should have looked for you long before now." "Why didn't you?" The question held no accusation, only genuine curiosity. Pride, ambition, fear. Thomas met her gaze directly. "Take your pick." A ghost of a smile touched Sarah's lips. "At least you're still honest." "Not always," he admitted, "but I'm trying to be now." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. 8 years of unspoken words creating an almost physical barrier. "You look successful," Sarah finally said. "I am, by most definitions." Thomas hesitated. "You have children." Something flickered in Sarah's expression, alarm, quickly masked. "Yes, Emily and Matthew." "Their father?" "Not in the picture." Her tone made it clear the subject was closed. Thomas nodded, respecting her boundary, while noting how carefully she avoided details. "How are they doing with you in here?" "They're with a neighbour," Sarah answered quickly. "Mrs. Grayson. She's been wonderful." The same name Emily had mentioned in her journal. Thomas wondered if this Mrs. Grayson was real or a convenient fiction Sarah told the hospital. "How much longer will you be here?" he asked. "That depends on whether my insurance magically reappears." Bitterness crept into Sarah's voice. "The hospital wants to transfer me to a state facility, but my doctor is fighting it. He says I'm still too weak to move." "What if the bills were taken care of?" Sarah's expression hardened. "I don't want your money, Thomas." "It's not about money," he said quietly. "It's about making sure you get better for your children." At the mention of Emily and Mattie, tears filled Sarah's eyes. "They're all I have," she whispered. "All that matters." Thomas moved closer, taking her hand before he could second-guess himself. "Let me help, Sarah. Not for old time's sake, not to ease my conscience, for Emily and Mattie." Sarah's fingers tightened around his. "You don't even know them." "I'd like to," he said. the simple truth behind his complex motivations. Sarah studied his face for a long moment. Why now, Thomas? Why after all this time? The question hung between them, demanding an honesty Thomas wasn't sure he was ready to offer. Did he tell her about meeting Emily, about his suspicions, about the overwhelming need to protect her children that had consumed him since that chance encounter? Before he could answer, Sarah's monitor began beeping rapidly. Her face contorted in pain as she clutched her chest. Sarah? Thomas reached for the call button as she struggled to breathe. Medical staff rushed in, pushing him aside. Sir, you need to leave. What's happening? Thomas demanded, watching in horror as Sarah's oxygen levels plummeted on the monitor. She's in respiratory distress. Please wait outside. The last thing Thomas saw before being ushered from the room was Sarah's eyes, wide with fear. Not for herself, he realized with crushing certainty, but for her children. Children who, contrary to what the hospital believed, were alone in an abandoned building, waiting for a mother who might not come home. In that moment, Thomas made a decision that would alter the course of all their lives. Whatever the truth about the past, he would ensure Emily and Mattie never spent another night alone and afraid. And he would do everything in his power to bring their mother back to them, even if it meant confronting the possibility that one of those children might be his own. The hospital waiting room felt like purgatory. Thomas paced, his expensive shoes wearing a path in the linoleum as doctors worked to stabilize Sarah. His mind raced between the woman fighting for her life behind closed doors and her children, alone in an abandoned building, unaware that their fragile world hung by a thread. Mr. Reynolds, a doctor, emerged looking exhausted. Ms. Wilson is stable now. What happened? Pneumothorax. Her lung partially collapsed. We've inserted a chest tube and she's responding well to treatment. The doctor hesitated. Are you family? Her chart doesn't list any emergency contacts except her children. Thomas made a split-second decision. I'm their father. The lie fell easily from his lips, creating an almost physical relief. Whether or not it was true, and he increasingly suspected it might be, claiming this connection gave him the authority to help. Then you should know we're concerned about her home situation. She'll need significant care during recovery, and with 2 young children. The doctor trailed off. That won't be a problem, Thomas assured him. I'll arrange everything. Good. And sir, those anonymous donations covering her medical bills, the hospital board is very appreciative. Thomas nodded, dismissing the gratitude. Money was the easiest part of this equation. Can I see her? Briefly, she's heavily sedated. Thomas entered Sarah's room, heart clenching at the sight of her pale face, the tube protruding from her chest. He pulled a chair close to her bed. I found them, Sarah, he whispered, taking her limp hand. Emily and Mattie, they're safe, but they need you, so you need to fight. He swallowed hard. And I need to know the truth. Sarah's eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Thomas sat with her until visiting hours ended, then reluctantly left to make arrangements that couldn't wait. His first call was to his lawyer. I need emergency temporary guardianship of 2 minors. Their mother is hospitalized, father unknown or absent. That's not a simple process, his lawyer cautioned. Courts generally require, I don't care what it requires, make it happen. Thomas ended the call and dialed his real estate agent. The penthouse on East 63rd. Is it still available? I need it furnished and ready by tomorrow. His final call was to his most trusted employee. Diane, I need a leave of absence, indefinite. Sir, the Beijing deal can wait. Family can't. The word felt strange on his tongue. Family, a concept that had been theoretical for years, suddenly felt concrete, urgent. Night had fallen by the time Thomas returned to the abandoned building. He found Emily sitting beside the window, writing in her journal by flashlight. "Your mother had a setback today," he said, without preamble. Emily's head snapped up, fear flashing across her face. "Is she—" "She's stable," Thomas assured her quickly. "But her recovery will take longer than expected." Emily's shoulders slumped with relief, then tensed again. "We'll manage." "You don't have to." Thomas sat on an overturned crate. "I found a place where you and Matty can stay until your mum comes home. Somewhere safe, with heat and running water." Suspicion darkened Emily's expression. "With who?" "With me. We don't even know you." "Your mother and I were more than friends, Emily. We were in love once." Emily's eyes widened. "Mum never talks about anyone from before." "People sometimes keep painful things private." Thomas chose his words carefully. "Especially from those they want to protect. Like how Mum says Dad is working far away, but really he left and never came back." Emily's directness was startling. Thomas felt a surge of anger toward the nameless man who had abandoned these children, if indeed that man existed and wasn't Thomas himself. "Yes, like that." Emily studied him with unsettling intensity. "Why should we trust you?" "Because your mother needs to focus on getting better, not worrying about you and Matty being alone." "If we go with you, can we visit Mum? Every day, if you want." Emily glanced at her sleeping brother, then back to Thomas. "We're not charity cases." "No," Thomas agreed, "you're not. And we stay together. Me and Matty. Always." Emily seemed to reach a decision. "We'll need to pack our things." Thomas watched as she efficiently gathered their meager belongings: clothes, books, Matty's stuffed dinosaur. The composition book went into her backpack last, protected like a treasure. As Thomas carried a still sleeping Matty to his car, Emily following with their bags, he felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. These children trusted him, tentatively, guardedly, but genuinely. He would not betray that trust, regardless of what the future held or what the truth about the past revealed. What Thomas couldn't know was that the truth was more complicated than even he had imagined, and that Sarah's journal, hidden in her hospital room, contained answers that would change everything. The morning sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating Emily and Matty as they explored their temporary home. Thomas had secured a 3-bedroom penthouse just blocks from Central Hospital, furnishing it overnight with everything the children might need. "This place is bigger than our whole old building," Matty whispered, eyes wide as he pressed his face against the window overlooking Central Park. Emily moved more cautiously, examining everything with suspicion, born of hard experience. "Why do you have a kid's room ready? Do you have children?" "No," Thomas admitted. "I had it prepared yesterday, for you and Matty." The girls' room was painted soft blue with a canopy bed and bookshelves filled with titles Thomas remembered Sarah loving. The boys' room featured a space theme, with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling and a bed shaped like a rocket. "Is this what rich people do? Get whole rooms ready in one day?" Thomas smiled slightly. "When they need to, yes." "We can't stay forever," Emily reminded him, practical even in the face of luxury. "Just until Mom comes home." "Of course." Thomas hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning inside him. "Emily, do you know who your father is?" The girl shrugged, attention focused on examining a snow globe. "Mom says he was someone special who couldn't be part of our lives. She never says his name." "And Matty's father?" "Different guy. Mom doesn't talk about him either." Emily set down the snow globe. "Can we go see Mom now?" Thomas arranged for a private nurse to stay with Matty while he took Emily to the hospital. As they walked the sterile corridors, Emily's small hand found its way into his. The simple gesture of trust made his throat tighten unexpectedly. Sarah was awake, looking marginally better than the previous day. Her eyes widened in alarm when Emily burst through the door. "Emily, what are you—" Her gaze flew to Thomas, panic evident. "What's going on?" "Thomas found us, Mom," Emily explained, climbing carefully onto the edge of the bed. "He's letting us stay at his house until you get better." Sarah's expression was a complicated mixture of gratitude and fear. "Where's Matty?" "With a nurse. He's safe," Thomas assured her. "Everyone's safe now." A tear slipped down Sarah's cheek as she pulled Emily close. "I'm so sorry, baby. I never meant for you to be alone so long." "We weren't alone," Emily insisted. "We had each other, and now we have Thomas too." Sarah's eyes met Thomas's over her daughter's head, questions burning in her gaze. He gave a small nod, silently promising they would talk later. "The doctor says you had a collapsed lung," Emily reported, having apparently questioned the medical staff on their way in. "But they fixed it with a tube. Does it hurt?" "Not much anymore." Sarah smoothed Emily's hair. "How did you and Thomas meet?" Emily launched into the story of the milk at Wilson's Corner Market, Thomas's generosity, and his subsequent discovery of their hiding place. As she spoke, Sarah's expression grew increasingly troubled. "Emily, sweetheart, could you get me some water from the nurse's station?" Sarah asked when her daughter paused for breath. Once Emily was out of earshot, Sarah turned to Thomas, her voice low and urgent. "What are you doing?" "Helping your children," he replied simply. "Our children." The question hung between them, charged with implication. "Matty isn't yours," Sarah said immediately. "And Emily?" Sarah closed her eyes briefly. "It's complicated." 7 years ago isn't complicated, Sarah. It's math." Thomas kept his voice gentle, despite the frustration building inside him. "Were you pregnant when you left?" "I didn't know then," she whispered. "I found out 3 weeks later." "Why didn't you tell me?" Sarah's laugh held no humor. "You'd made it very clear where your priorities lay. I wasn't going to be the woman who trapped you with a baby. It wouldn't have been trapping me. It would have been giving me a choice. The choice between your dreams and a family you never asked for?" Sarah shook her head. "I couldn't do that to you, or to her. So you just disappeared, changed her name." Sarah's expression shifted to confusion. "What are you talking about?" "Professor Jenkins told me you named her Charlotte." Understanding dawned on Sarah's face. "Charlotte Emily Wilson. She's always gone by her middle name. She thought it sounded more grown up, like a writer." The confirmation hit Thomas like a physical blow. Emily was his daughter. His child had been living in an abandoned building, begging for milk, while he accumulated wealth he never had time to enjoy. "Why did you come back to New York?" he asked. "After all this time?" "I never left. We've been here all along." Sarah's voice held a challenge, just in a different world than yours. The gulf between their experiences, his rise to wealth and power, her struggle to survive with 2 children, seemed suddenly unbridgeable. "I want to be part of her life," Thomas said quietly. "If you'll let me." Sarah studied him for a long moment. "Why? Because of biology, or because you actually care about her?" "Both," Thomas admitted. "At first it was suspicion, then curiosity, but now, having met her, she's extraordinary, Sarah, and not just because she might be mine." "She is yours," Sarah confirmed softly. "But that doesn't automatically make you her father." "I know." Thomas took her hand carefully, mindful of the IV. "But I'd like the chance to become one." Sarah's reply was interrupted by Emily's return with a cup of water. The girl looked between them suspiciously. "Were you talking about me?" "Yes," Thomas answered before Sarah could. "Your mom and I have a lot to figure out." Emily nodded sagely. "Because you used to love each other?" Sarah's eyes met Thomas's, a world of history and hurt and possibility in her gaze, something like that. The moment was interrupted by a doctor entering to check Sarah's vitals. Thomas used the opportunity to step outside, needing space to process the confirmation of what he'd suspected. Emily was his daughter. He had a child, a brilliant, resilient, extraordinary child who had been surviving by her wits while he built an empire of glass and steel. The realization filled him with equal parts joy and devastating regret. 7 years lost, never to be recovered. But perhaps if Sarah allowed it, there were still years ahead to build the family he hadn't known he wanted until now. Days blended into a new routine. Mornings meant breakfast with Emily and Matty, learning their preferences and habits. Emily liked her toast barely browned. Matty insisted his eggs couldn't touch his bacon. Thomas found himself looking forward to these discoveries, each one a piece of the puzzle that was his unexpected family. Afternoons were split between the hospital with Sarah and the office, where Thomas delegated everything possible to focus on what mattered most. Evenings were for the children, helping with homework, reading stories, establishing the security they'd lacked for too long. A week after bringing the children home, Thomas sat on the edge of Emily's bed for their nightly ritual of reading a chapter from Anne of Green Gables, Sarah's childhood favorite. "Thomas," Emily interrupted as he turned a page. "Are you my dad?" The question, delivered with her characteristic directness, caught him off guard. He set the book aside, giving her his full attention. "What makes you ask that? Mom looks at you differently than she looks at other people, and you look like me." Emily's fingers touched her own face, tracing features they shared. "Plus, I heard you talking at the hospital." Thomas had learned not to underestimate his daughter's perception. "Yes, Emily, I am your biological father. Why weren't you with us before?" "Because I didn't know about you," he answered honestly, "and that's my greatest regret." Emily considered this. "Did you and Mom have a fight?" "Not exactly. We made different choices, and those choices took us in different directions. But you're here now." "Yes." "Are you staying?" The vulnerability beneath the question broke his heart. "For as long as you and your mom will have me." Emily nodded, accepting his answer with the solemnity that made her seem far older than 7. Matty's dad isn't coming back. He didn't want to be a dad. Some people aren't ready for that responsibility. "Are you?" Her blue eyes, his eyes, studied him intently. "I'm learning," Thomas admitted, "every day." This seemed to satisfy her. "Can I call you Dad?" The question filled his chest with warmth. "I'd like that very much." "Not all the time," Emily clarified. "Just when it feels right. Whenever you're ready." Emily picked up the book, handing it back to him. "Chapter 7, please." "Dad." The word hung in the air between them, new and precious. The next morning, Thomas took both children to visit Sarah, whose recovery was progressing steadily. As Emily and Matty excitedly told their mother about their latest adventures, Thomas noticed how Sarah's gaze continually returned to him, evaluating, questioning. When the children were distracted by a therapy dog visiting patients, Sarah motioned him closer. "Emily told me about your conversation," she said quietly. Thomas nodded, uncertain whether to expect anger or acceptance. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked. "Being a father isn't something you can delegate or reschedule when work gets busy." "I've never been more certain of anything." The truth of it resonated in his core. "These past weeks have made me realize what I've been missing. Not just Emily, but a life with meaning beyond the next acquisition or merger." Sarah's expression softened. "You've changed. Having your world turned upside down will do that." And Thomas smiled slightly. "Finding out you have a daughter, realizing the woman you never stopped loving needs you, it puts things in perspective." Sarah's eyes widened at his admission. "Thomas, I'm not asking for anything," he assured her quickly. "I just want you to know that helping you and the children isn't obligation or guilt. It's because I care. I always have." Before Sarah could respond, the doctor arrived with news. "Ms. Wilson, your latest tests look excellent. If this progress continues, we can discuss discharge planning next week. The joy on the children's faces was mirrored in Thomas's heart, but as the initial excitement subsided, practical questions emerged. "Where will we go?" Emily asked later that evening as Thomas tucked her in. "When Mum comes home?" The question had been on his mind as well. The penthouse was temporary, a convenient solution in an emergency. But what came next? "That depends on what your mum wants," Thomas answered carefully. "She wants us to be together," Emily said with certainty. "All of us." "Does she?" Thomas wondered if his daughter was projecting her own wishes. "She told me," Emily confided, "when you were talking to the doctor. She said she was scared but also happy that we found you again." Thomas absorbed this information, hope cautiously blooming. "Well, we have time to figure it out." "Not much time," Emily countered. "Mum's coming home soon." "True. I should probably start looking for a more permanent place." Emily sat up, suddenly animated. "With a yard, and maybe a dog." Thomas laughed at her enthusiasm. "Those are definitely possibilities. Mattie wants a treehouse," she added. "And I want a library, a real one with ladders." "Anything else?" Thomas asked, amused by her growing wish list. Emily's expression turned serious. "Just us, together." The simple wish echoed Thomas's own deepest desire. "I'll do everything I can to make that happen." As he left Emily's room, Thomas found himself facing the most important negotiation of his life. Not for a business deal, but for a second chance at the family he'd almost lost before knowing they existed. Sarah was coming home. The question was, where would home be? And would there be room in it for him? The autumn afternoon was crisp and golden as Thomas parked outside Central Hospital. Today was the day. Sarah was finally being discharged after 112 days of hospitalization. "Do you think Mom will like the surprise?" Matty bounced in his car seat, barely containing his excitement. "I hope so," Thomas replied, sharing a conspiratorial glance with Emily in the rearview mirror. The past week had been a flurry of activity. Thomas had found and purchased a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, not far from the children's school, with the yard Emily wanted and plenty of room for all of them. He'd involved the children in decorating decisions, but kept the final result a secret from Sarah, wanting to give her a fresh start untainted by her struggles of the past year. "Remember," Emily instructed her brother as they entered the hospital. "It's a surprise, so no hints." Matty nodded solemnly. Though Thomas suspected the 4-year-old's ability to keep secrets was limited at best. They found Sarah dressed and sitting on the edge of her bed, a nurse reviewing discharge instructions. Though still thin, color had returned to her cheeks, and the anxious tension that had marked her features for weeks had eased. "Mommy!" Matty launched himself at her, only Thomas's quick intervention preventing him from colliding with her still healing chest. "Careful, buddy," Thomas reminded him gently. "Mum's still getting stronger." Sarah gathered Matty into a careful hug, then reached for Emily, who approached with more restraint but equal emotion. "I've missed you so much," Sarah whispered, kissing the tops of their heads. "We missed you too," Emily replied. "But Thomas, Dad, took good care of us." The way Sarah's eyes flew to his face at Emily's casual use of Dad made Thomas's heart skip. They hadn't discussed what his role would be after Sarah's discharge, both of them cautious about pushing too far, too fast. "He did he?" Sarah's tone was light, but Thomas caught the question beneath. "He makes funny pancakes," Matty reported, "with faces. And he never forgets to check my homework," Emily added. "Even when he has important meetings." Sarah's expression softened as she listened to their enthusiastic endorsements. "It sounds like you've all gotten along well." "We have," Thomas confirmed, meeting her gaze steadily. "But we've missed you." The drive from the hospital was filled with Matty's non-stop chatter and Emily's more measured updates about school and friends. Sarah listened with the hunger of a mother who had missed too much, her hand occasionally reaching back to touch her children, as if reassuring herself they were really there. "This isn't the way to the penthouse," she noted as Thomas turned onto the Brooklyn Bridge. "We're not going to the penthouse," he replied, exchanging a grin with Emily. "Thomas." Sarah's voice held a note of warning. "What have you done?" "Just wait and see, Mom," Emily urged. "It's a good surprise." "Good." 20 minutes later, Thomas parked in front of a 4-story brownstone with a bright red door. Window boxes overflowed with autumn flowers, and a wreath of golden leaves adorned the entrance. "What is this place?" Sarah asked as Thomas helped her from the car. "Home," he answered simply, "if you want it to be." Sarah's eyes widened as she looked from the house to Thomas and back again. "You bought a house? Without asking me?" "He asked us," Emily piped up. "Matty picked the red door. And Emily picked the neighborhood because it has the best library," Thomas added. "But if you don't like it, we can find somewhere else. This is just an option." Sarah's expression was unreadable as she slowly climbed the steps, leaning on Thomas's arm for support. He unlocked the door, stepping back to let her enter first. The children rushed ahead, eager to show their mother all their favorite features. Thomas followed more slowly, giving Sarah space to absorb each room at her own pace. The main floor held a spacious living room that opened to a kitchen designed for family gatherings. Upstairs were bedrooms for each of them, Emily's with the promised bookshelves, Matty's with a star-patterned ceiling, Sarah's overlooking the small backyard where a maple tree stood ready for a future treehouse. The top floor held Thomas's home office and a guest room. "There's a garden," Emily announced, leading her mother to the back windows, "and Thomas says we can plant vegetables in the spring." "Thomas says a lot of things," Sarah murmured, but without heat. When the children dashed upstairs to check if their toys had been arranged to their satisfaction, Sarah turned to Thomas, arms crossed protectively across her chest. "This is too much." "It's not charity," he said quickly, having anticipated her objection. "It's an investment in our family. Emily and Matty's college funds are already established. This is just a place for them to grow up, with both of us, if that's what you want." "And if it's not what I want," Sarah challenged, "if I want to stand on my own feet, not be dependent on you, then I'll help you find your own place, set up whatever support you need, and respect your decision." The words cost him, but he meant them. "All I ask is to remain part of Emily's life, and Matty's too, if you'll allow it." Sarah's defensive posture softened slightly. "You've really fallen for them, haven't you?" "Completely," Thomas admitted. "They're extraordinary, Sarah, just like their mother." A hint of a smile touched her lips. "Flattery, Mr. Reynolds." "Just truth." Thomas took a careful step closer. "I know I have no right to ask for a second chance. I know 7 years is a long time, and we're different people now. But these past weeks with the children, with you, have shown me what matters. And it's not what I thought it was when I was 23 and too ambitious for my own good." Sarah's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "What if we try and it doesn't work? The children are already attached to you. I can't put them through another loss." "Then we make sure it works," Thomas said simply. "Day by day, problem by problem, together." "It won't be easy," Sarah warned. "I'm not the carefree girl you knew in college. Being a single mother changes you. And I'm not the driven young man who thought success meant sacrificing everything else." Thomas reached for her hand, relief flooding through him when she didn't pull away. "We start fresh, get to know each other again. No pressure, no expectations, just possibility." From upstairs came the sound of children's laughter, a backdrop to the moment hanging between them. "One condition," Sarah said finally. "I go back to work when I'm stronger. I need my independence." "Of course. And I pay my share of expenses." "That's 2 conditions," Thomas pointed out, smiling. "Take it or leave it, Reynolds." The flash of her old spirit warmed him to his core. "I'll take it, gladly." Sarah's gaze traveled around the home he'd created for them, lingering on the family photos already arranged on the mantel, pictures Thomas had carefully collected from Sarah's old apartment and supplemented with new ones taken during the children's stay with him. "You really thought of everything," she murmured. "Not everything," Thomas admitted. "I'm still learning, but I want to get it right, Sarah. For all of us." Sarah's hand tightened around his. "So do I." It wasn't a declaration of love or forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. And as the children thundered back downstairs, demanding a backyard exploration before dinner, Thomas felt a contentment he'd never known in all his years of success. This was what mattered, this improvised, imperfect family finding its way together. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as one. Winter descended on Brooklyn, transforming their neighborhood into a wonderland of white. 3 months had passed since Sarah's homecoming, months of adjustment, negotiation, and gradually rebuilding trust. Thomas sat at the kitchen island, reviewing quarterly reports while keeping an eye on Mattie, who was constructing an elaborate tower of blocks nearby. The domestic scene would have been unrecognizable to his former self. The high-powered executive working from home so he could be present for his family. "Dad!" Emily burst through the front door, bringing a swirl of snowflakes and excitement. "We got the lead, both of us." Thomas set aside his work immediately, giving her his full attention. "That's fantastic. The winter pageant?" Emily nodded, cheeks flushed with cold and triumph. "Miss Abernathy says me and Jamie Chen have the best projection in the whole 4th grade, and Mom got the costume design position." Sarah followed more sedately, carrying grocery bags and smiling at their daughter's enthusiasm. The last 3 months had restored her health and confidence. She'd accepted a part-time position at Emily's school, teaching literature and drama, a compromise that allowed her professional fulfillment while maintaining flexibility for family needs. "Congratulations to both of you," Thomas said, rising to take the groceries from Sarah. Their hands brushed in the exchange, a small contact that still sent warmth through him. "It's just an elementary school production," Sarah demurred, though her pleasure was evident. "It's your first creative project since before Mattie was born," Thomas reminded her. "That's significant." Sarah's smile acknowledged his understanding. "It feels good to be using that part of my brain again." Their relationship had evolved cautiously, with respect for the history between them and the stakes involved. They shared parenting responsibilities and household management, but maintained separate bedrooms. Thomas was careful never to push, allowing Sarah to set the pace of their reconnection. That evening, after the children were asleep, Thomas found Sarah in the garden, wrapped in a heavy cardigan despite the cold, staring at the star-filled sky. "Penny, for your thoughts?" he asked, offering a mug of hot chocolate. "Just thinking about how much has changed in a year." She accepted the mug gratefully. "Last December, I was in the hospital wondering if I'd see another Christmas. Now you're directing a pageant and designing costumes," Thomas finished, "while maintaining a C+ average in your cooking attempts." Sarah laughed, shoving his shoulder playfully. That pot roast was at least a B-. "If graded on a curve," he teased. These moments of easy banter had become more frequent, glimpses of the connection they'd once shared emerging through the layers of caution they'd built. "I had a call from Richard today," Thomas said, referring to his business partner. "The Singapore expansion is ready for final approval." Sarah's expression grew guarded. "Will you need to travel?" "Normally, yes, for several weeks." Thomas watched her face carefully. "But I'm not going." "Oh, Thomas, you can't just abandon your company's biggest project." "I'm not abandoning it. I'm delegating." He turned to face her fully. "Richard is more than capable of handling the launch. I'll join by video conference for the essential meetings." Sarah studied him with the penetrating gaze that had always seen through his defenses. "Are you sure about this? 6 months ago, nothing would have kept you from being there in person. 6 months ago, I didn't understand what I was missing." Thomas gestured toward the house where their children slept. "This, all of this, matters more." Sarah was silent for a long moment. "I never wanted you to give up your dreams for us." "I'm not giving up anything," Thomas said firmly. "I'm choosing. There's a difference. And if someday you resent that choice..." The question revealed her deepest fear, that history would repeat itself, that ambition would once again drive a wedge between them. "Sarah." Thomas set down his mug and took her hands in his. "My company will continue to succeed whether I am physically present for every meeting or not. But Emily's winter pageant, Matty losing his first tooth, family dinner on Tuesday nights, those are moments I can never get back." He squeezed her fingers gently. "I already missed 7 years. I won't miss another day if I can help it." Something shifted in Sarah's expression, a softening, a surrender of the last line of defense she'd maintained around her heart. "I've been afraid," she admitted quietly. "Afraid to trust this, to trust us." "I know." Thomas released one of her hands to brush a strand of hair from her face. "You have every reason to be cautious. I failed you once, failed Emily before I even knew her." "We both made mistakes," Sarah acknowledged. "I should have told you about the pregnancy." "What matters is now," Thomas said, "and our future, if you want one. Together." Snow began to fall, delicate flakes catching in Sarah's hair like stars. The beauty of the moment, this woman he'd never stopped loving, illuminated by moonlight in the garden of the home they were creating, overwhelmed him. "I love you, Sarah," he said simply. "I never stopped. Not really." Her eyes shimmered with emotion as she stepped closer. "I tried so hard not to love you anymore. To be practical, to focus on the children." A smile touched her lips. "But then you bought milk for a little girl you didn't know and followed her home and turned our world upside down again." "Best impulse purchase of my life," Thomas murmured. Sarah laughed softly, then grew serious again. "I love you too. I think I always will." The admission broke the final barrier between them. Thomas drew her into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that held the promise of their shared future. The years of separation fell away, replaced by the certainty that they had found their way back to where they were always meant to be. Inside the house, unnoticed by either of them, Emily watched from her bedroom window, a satisfied smile spreading across her face. Her family was complete at last. Spring blossoms filled the brownstones' tiny backyard as Thomas stood beside the newly constructed treehouse, supervising as Matty and his friends climbed the ladder for its inaugural expedition. "Careful on those steps," he called, parental worry now as natural as breathing. "They're fine," Emily assured him, rolling her eyes with the mild disdain of a now 8-year-old who considered herself far more mature than the little kids. "When did you become so grown up?" Thomas asked, ruffling her hair. "Dad, stop!" She protested, but leaned against his side briefly before darting off to join her own friends at the picnic table where Sarah was setting out refreshments. 1 year had passed since that fateful night at Wilson's Corner Market. 1 year since a child's request for milk had changed all their lives irrevocably. Today, they were celebrating not just Emily's 8th birthday, but their first full year as a family. Thomas watched as Sarah laughed with the other parents, at ease in her role as hostess. Their journey hadn't been without challenges. Merging 2 independent lives, navigating co-parenting, rebuilding trust, each step had required patience and compromise. But the rewards had been immeasurable. 3 months earlier, Sarah had officially become Mrs. Reynolds in a small ceremony in their backyard, with Emily as maid of honor and Matty as ring-bearer. The children had been ecstatic. Emily because she'd helped plan every detail, and Matty because, in his words, now we're a real family forever. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Sarah appeared at his side, slipping her hand into his with the easy affection that had become their norm. "Just thinking about how quickly everything changes," Thomas replied. "A year ago today, a little girl asked if she could pay tomorrow for a carton of milk," Sarah finished, "and you said yes. Best decision I ever made." Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder. "Second best. What was the first?" "Coming back for us, choosing family over everything else." Thomas tightened his arm around her waist. "Not a difficult choice, once I understood what was at stake." From the treehouse came peals of laughter as Matty and his friends discovered the periscope Thomas had installed, allowing them to spy on the proceedings below. "I see you, Mom and Dad!" Matty called, waving frantically from the small window. "I can see everything." "That's what I'm afraid of," Sarah murmured, making Thomas laugh. "Speaking of seeing everything," he said, keeping his voice casual, "have you given any more thought to our discussion?" Sarah's expression softened. "About expanding our family." Thomas nodded. They'd been talking about the possibility for several months, whether to try for another child, a sibling for Emily and Matty, who would be fully theirs together. "Actually," Sarah said, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth, "I was going to save this for later, but—" She guided his hand to her still flat stomach. "Surprise!" Thomas stared at her in wonder. "Are you saying—" "Due in November," Sarah confirmed, her eyes bright with joy. "Dr. Carter confirmed it yesterday." Emotion overwhelmed him. Gratitude, love, a sense of completion he'd never imagined possible before this unexpected family had become his. "Have you told the children?" Sarah shook her head. "I wanted you to be the first to know." "They're going to be thrilled," Thomas predicted, already imagining Emily's organizational planning and Matty's enthusiastic questions. "Emily will insist on naming the baby if it's a girl," Sarah laughed. "She's had Charlotte picked out since we discussed the possibility." "After her own middle name," Thomas nodded. "I like it. And if it's a boy?" "We'll figure it out together," Thomas said, "like we do everything now." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the garden as their friends and the children's classmates enjoyed the birthday celebrations. Thomas observed it all with a full heart, this life they'd built from the fragments of their past and the promise of their future. Later that evening, after the guests had departed and the children were in bed, Thomas found Emily sitting on the back steps, her composition book open on her lap. "Writing about your birthday?" he asked, settling beside her. She nodded. "And about our family, for the time capsule at school." "May I see?" Emily hesitated, then handed him the book. "Just this page." Thomas read his daughter's careful handwriting. "1 year ago, our family changed forever. I asked a stranger for milk because Matty was hungry and Mom was sick. I didn't know the stranger was my dad. Now we all live together in a house with a red door and a treehouse. Mom and Dad got married, and we're a real family. Sometimes good things happen when you're brave enough to ask for help." Thomas swallowed hard, returning the journal. "That's beautiful, Emily." She accepted the book, closing it carefully. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't been at the store that night?" The question sent a chill through him. How close they had come to never finding each other. "I try not to," he admitted. "Some things are too painful to imagine." Emily nodded sagely. "Like parallel universes in science class. In another universe, we never met you. But in this one, we did." Thomas put his arm around her small shoulders. "And that's all that matters." Emily leaned against him, content. "I'm glad it was you, Dad, at the store that night." "So am I, Em." Thomas pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "So am I." From inside came the sound of Sarah calling them for the traditional birthday evening hot chocolate. As they stood to go in, Emily took Thomas's hand. "I can pay you back now," she said seriously. "For what?" "The milk. From that first night, I promised I'd pay you back." Thomas knelt to her level, looking into the blue eyes so like his own. "You already have, Emily, 1,000 times over." Hand in hand, father and daughter walked back into the warmth of their home, where Sarah and Mattie waited. A family brought together by chance, cemented by love, and bound by a promise kept. A promise as simple and profound as a child's earnest words. "I can pay tomorrow." And tomorrow had become today, and today had become forever.